Hey there, developers. Ever feel like you are nailing your React project but hitting a wall when it comes to building a full stack applications? Maybe you have wondered, what if I could build an app that not only looks great on the front end, but also has a powerful, scalable backend? That's where the MERN stack comes in. So imagine building a complete web application from scratch, one where you can create, read, update, and delete data seamlessly. With MERN, you are not just styling components, you are building the entire structure of an app end to end. In this tutorial, I'll walk you through each step in the MERN stack, showing you how to work with MongoDB, Express, React, and Node.js so that you can bring your front-end skills to the next level. By the end of this video, you'll understand how to set up backend database for your app, handle requests and create APIs, and connect your front-end React app to a real backend and see your data update in a real time. So, if you are ready to step out of the front-end only world and create a full-stack applications you can truly call your own, then stick around. You'll get hands-on practical experience and trust me, your portfolio will thank you for it. Ready to dive in? Let's go. Alright, before we jump into installing MongoDB, let's quickly break down what it actually is and why it is such a powerful tool for web developers. MongoDB is a database that stores data in a way that is little different from the traditional rows and tables you may know. Instead, MongoDB organizes data in collections made up of documents that look like JSON objects. Each document can hold a flexible structure, making it really adaptable for different types of applications. Think of it this way. Imagine we are building an app to track a library's book. Each book can be a document in our books collection. Inside each document, we can store details like the book's title, author, type, and even a list of the borrower's names if it's checked out. This flexibility is part of why MongoDB is so popular for web applications, where you may need to handle all sorts of data in different shapes. Now let's set MongoDB up on our computer. So you have two main options here. You can either install MongoDB locally right on your computer, or you can use MongoDB Atlas, which is a cloud-based version. Atlas is great if you want a quick setup without installing anything on your system. But for today's tutorial, I will go ahead with the local installation. So to get started, search for install MongoDB community on Google, and then you can come to this official download page. From here, select the version that is accurate for your operating system. So you have here Windows, Mac OS, or Linux. MongoDB has clear installation instructions on their website. So just follow along if you need help for your specific setup. And if you are a Docker fan, you can also install MongoDB in a Docker container. And for today, I'll just go ahead and install on Windows. So I just scroll down, then you can find here the MongoDB Download Center. I'll just go ahead and click that. Then I'll go right here. So I have Windows here selected and the Bash MSI. So I'll just go ahead and download it. When that's completed, I'll just go and run it. I'll just click next. I accept the terms, next. Basically, you just follow the wizard and just keep it up. So I'm just saying complete. I'll just select by default for now all the default options. Click next, install, and that will install it for me. When that one is done, let's make sure everything is working smoothly. I recommend using a tool called Studio 3T, or also known as Robo 3T as well, which will help you visually connect to your MongoDB database. So if you don't have it already installed, go ahead and download it on your machine. And you can select the options. I'll just accept the mandatory ones, and then you can options possible for you. I'll go ahead and download this on my machine. I'll accept and continue. And also it will trigger for me installers, which should be also very straightforward. Once installed, you can go ahead and open up a new connection. And usually the MongoDB runs on localhost 27017. So we'll go and add that. So that will be our localhost. And that's already giving us that port by default because usually MongoDB runs on that port. And I'll just call it MongoDB connection. Then we'll just go ahead and save this. And there we go. We got our MongoDB here listed. I will just go ahead and connect. And you can see here that I can see the MongoDB connection is there on the localhost 27017. So now congrats, you are ready to start using MongoDB. If you don't see them, double check that MongoDB is running in the background as it needs to be active for our project. And that is it. Now you have got MongoDB all set up and ready to go. Next up, we'll start building out our server and connecting it to our new database. Alright, before we get too far into building, let's first make sure we have the right tools to make our development smoother and faster. These tools will help us see what's going on under the hood of our application and make troubleshooting and debugging so much easier. The first tool you will need is React DevTools. This tool is a lifesaver when you are building with React. It lets you inspect all the components and state in your application. So if something is not working quite right, you can just have a peek inside and see what's going on. Think of it like a magnifying glass that lets you zoom into every part of your React app to spot any issues. Now, to get this into your machine, first you need to have Chrome, so you can go ahead and Google it out. Then you can access it through Chrome Web Store. When you do so, for me it's already installed, but you will have here add to Chrome or add extension. So just go ahead and add it to your Chrome, and you may have to rerun your Chrome again so you can see it. Once it's installed, you'll see options in your DevTool panel, for example, like the component and the profiler as well. This tab will help you track each component state and props, and also the reasons why they render behind the scene, which is very helpful when we are troubleshooting. Now, the second tool is Postman. We have got Postman. Think of Postman as a remote control for your APIs. It is an amazing tool for testing all the backend routes and APIs you create. Let's say if you are really building a to-do app and you want to add a feature where users can add, edit, or delete tasks. Postman lets you easily test each of these API calls to make sure they are working just the way you want it. Now you can go ahead and install it. You'll have options for Mac and Windows and Linux, all of it. So this one you can go ahead and install it. It will run for you the installation on your machine. And you have two options. You can either run it on the browser or you can install the desktop app and run it on your laptop. And this is a quick peek look at the UI of the desktop version, how it looks like. So don't feel overwhelmed if you didn't use it before. We'll get into it one by one. We will start building in our next chapters of this video. Now, so take a few minutes to install these tools, React DevTool and Postman, and get familiar with them. These will make your development experience so much smoother and give you more control over what's happening in your app. Once you are set up, you are ready to dive into building our backend. So, I'll see you in the next chapter. Alright, now we are diving into the technical setup. Before we start building our full stack app, we need to install some key components and set up a structure that will keep things organized from day one. In this chapter, we are going to install Node.js for our backend and then set up React project for the front end. So step number one, first things first, is let's get Node.js installed. So Node.js is the foundation for our backend. It will handle everything from routing to talking to our database. To install Node.js, feel free to visit nodejs.org and grab the LTS, the long-term support version. Okay, this is the most stable version and recommended for the most projects. If you click it, it will just download and install it for you, and you can just follow the prompt and install it. It's very easy and very simple. Once downloaded, if you are not sure if it is installed correctly, you can just go ahead and open your terminal for your operating system, and you can just type node-v, and you should see here the version coming up for you. If you don't see it, that means it's not installed. Maybe just go and try again. Then you have another option as well to install is using the NVM, which is Node Version Manager. And this one basically it helps you to switch between the versions of the node. Like for example, now I have Node version 20 installed, but let's say for some old projects, maybe you need the version 16. So the NVM basically help you to switch between these versions in your terminal. So go ahead, visit the GitHub link and read the documentation and go to the link. It is also very straight and very forward to follow as well. Now that the node is installed, we'll set up folders for our backend and frontend. And let's create a new folder for our app on our desktop. So choose any place in your machine you want. So I'll create here a new folder and I will call it workspace, for example. So I'll say workspace. And inside this folder, I'll just create another folder and I'll name it backend. Simple as that. So this is where our server will be running. Then again, we'll have also another folder called frontend. That's for our React application. But before I create the folder, what I will do, I will open this in my Visual Studio Code. So cd this pattern and code dot, and that will open for me this folder in my Visual Studio Code. So Visual Studio Code is my preferred IDE that I like to use because it have a lot of built-in features. So I'll just go ahead and open it up. Feel free to open any favorite IDE you like. So I'll just make the IDE a little bit bigger for you so you can see it easily. Now, to create our React app, you can use a lot of built-in libraries, and I think the most common one if you are an old front-end developers create React app, but that is not supported anymore. But you have a lot of other options at the moment. So you have Next.js, you have Vite, you have many others. Now, every day something is coming up. But for today's video, we are going to use Vite, and Vite is a fast build tool that lets us set up our React projects with minimal overhead and speedy loading times as well. And to create a new React app with Vite, it is also very straightforward and also very simple. We can just go ahead to our terminal, and I'll use my built-in terminal in Visual Studio Code, but you can use also your operating system terminal. And I'll just go here and I'll say npm create and then Vite at latest. I want to use the latest version. Then I'll call my folder the front end. And I'll make this one a little bit up and then we hit enter. As we hit enter, you'll be showed up with few options. For example, here it says that we need to install the full packages, which is the latest version, I guess, before we proceed. So I'll say yes, go ahead and do that. And then after that, we'll ask what is your favorite framework. So for today's tutorial, of course, we'll be using React. So we will select React as our favorite framework that we want to use today. And then here it asks you to select a variant. For example, do you want to use TypeScript? Do you want to use JavaScript? Do you want to use even TypeScript with a new with SWC or even JavaScript with SWC? So SWC is a new thing coming in, which is still under testing. So I don't like to use things which are still under testing. So I'll stick with normal framework and I'll be using TypeScript for today. And don't worry if you're not familiar with TypeScript. It's also whatever we learn today will be applicable if you are using JavaScript. So you can follow along as well. So I'll select TypeScript and you can see it's immediately created a new project for me. So all what I do, I can do cd, my folder name I said, so it will be front end. And then we have to install the dependencies, so npm install. And you'll see that compared to create React app, the npm install will run really quickly here. When that one is done, we can just run npm run dev, and that will run our front-end application. And we can access it with this link, so I'll just go ahead and copy. And as soon that one runs, you should be able to see this Vite plus React welcome screen, which means our setup worked perfectly. Even you can see here the count is working as well. And this is the foundation of our front end, and we'll be building on it through the course. So now what is next? Now we have got a solid structure in place with a backend folder ready for our Node server and a front end setup with Vite and React. In the next chapter, we'll start focusing on the backend setup so our server is ready to communicate with our front end. So get excited, we are just getting started, and this setup will make building a full stack app feel smooth and structured. And see you in the next chapter. Alright, now that we have our project structure ready, it is time to dive into setting up Babel. So you may be wondering why Babel? Well, Babel is like a translator for JavaScript. It takes the latest, fanciest JavaScript features and convert them into a version that older environments like older browsers or Node.js versions can understand. Think of it as your project's universal translator. So first things first is that we need to initialize our backend project. So this will create for us a package.json file, which is basically a shopping list for everything your project needs. So make sure you open your terminal and make sure you navigate to your backend folder. So currently I'm in the front end folder, so I have to go one level up and then cd backend folder. We are in the backend folder, we will run a command to initialize our project and simple as typing npm init -y. Okay, and the -y flag skips all the questions and set up a default package.json file for us. So we'll go ahead and enter. And while it's doing its work, I'll just go open my folder, which is the backend. When this finishes, we'll see a new file popping up there, which is the package.json. So there we go. You can see the new file. If we open it up, basically it will not have anything at the moment. It just have the name and the version and empty description. That's it. Now, let's go back to our terminal and we'll move into step number 2, which is to install Babel as a div dependency. So Babel has multiple pieces that work together to compile your code, and we'll install them step by step. So first thing what I will do, I'll run npm install, and then I'll say dash dash save dash dev. Means the dependencies I'm installing them as a dev dependency. And the first one will be at babel /cli. Okay, and this command line tool that lets you run Babel directly from the terminal. It's like the engine that makes Babel work. Next thing we want to install as well is at babel /core. And this is the brain of Babel that does all the heavy lifting to translate your JavaScript code. Then the next thing we want to install is at babel /preset -env. And think of this as a set of rules that tell Babel how to translate your code for different JavaScript environments. So I'll go ahead and hit enter so it's installed these for me. So when that one's done, you can just open up your package.json to make sure these dependencies have been installed. And you can see now I have a div dependencies in my package.json and have the 3 packages I have installed here with the latest versions as well. Now, step number 3 is to install some main dependencies we need. So let's install these main dependencies that we will use in our backend. These are the tools that make our app functional. So let's go ahead and open our terminal again. npm install, or if you can do a shortcut for I, that's the same thing. So first I want to install is Express, okay? And this is the backbone for our backend. It's like the stage where all the action happens, routes, APIs, and everything. Next thing is body parser. Okay, and body parser, imagine this as a translator for incoming requests. It helps us read data sent by the users in forms or JSON format. Okay, and the next thing I want to install is cores, and this acts as a security guard that manages who can talk to your backend. So perfect for controlling access. Then next thing is Mongoose. And this one basically it's like our librarian. It helps us organize and manage data in our MongoDB, our database. Then last thing is Node Man, okay? And this is like a handy assistant that restarts your server automatically whenever you make changes. So saves so much time for us. Now let's hit enter and install all these dependencies. Then we can just open again our package.json and make sure that it is installed successfully. And you can see it is a slightly difference. The first thing we installed first time for Babel were all div dependencies because we only need them during the development time. But the other dependencies, we install them as normal dependencies, means you need them through the development process and also when your app is working in production as well. Now, step number 4 is to create the Babel for us. So we will tell Babel what to do. And to do that, we need to create a file called Babel RC. So I'll go inside my backend folder and create a new file called .babel rc. Okay, and this file is like a guidebook for our Babel. So make sure you created this file inside your backend folder, and then we will go open up this file and we will add a basic configuration for now. Okay, so we'll say preset use at Babel slash, if you remember we installed this earlier, preset-env. Okay, so this basically, it will tell Babel to use this preset to translate our modern JavaScript. Now, let's verify that everything works. So we open up again our package.json and we should see both dependencies, the dev dependencies for Babel tools and the dependencies for the normal tools that we need. And that is it. Your backend is now equipped to handle the latest JavaScript without breaking a sweat. And in the next part, we will start actually building out the backend functionality. So let's get going and have more fun. It's time to start setting up our server, and this will be the backbone of our application, where all the logic and data flows will happen. By the end of this chapter, you will have a functional server running and ready for us to build upon. So let's break this down into very easy steps. The first thing we need to make sure our server runs properly. For this, we will define a start script that uses NodeMan and Babel Node to monitor changes and execute our code. So go ahead, open your package.json and find the script section. And what we will do, we'll remove this current default script because we don't need it, and we will define a new script, and you can name it anything you like. But I will use a meaningful one, which is start. Then I will add the script what I want it to do. So first thing we need to do is run the nodeman. So we do npx nodeman, okay, the package we installed earlier, and that automatically restarts the server when the changes are detected. Then we specify the file we want to use, and I'll create later this file in the root of my project. I will call it index.js. Then you will add a command which will call it -exec px babel node, and this basically will run our code using Babel node, which transpires modern JavaScript on the fly. Then one more piece we need to add is -e.js, and this one basically ensures NodeMan only runs and watches the JavaScript files for us. Now, the Babel node, if you follow up with me this tutorial, is that we didn't install it yet, so we will go ahead and install it as well. So I'll run npm install and make sure you are in your backend folder just save -dev because it will be a developer dependency, and also add babel/node. And this will go ahead and install the new package for me, okay? And if you slide it a bit down, you should see it in your div dependencies here, right here as well. Now, we updated our package.json. We created the script. Now let's create this file that will be running our server. So I'll go ahead in the root of my backend folder. I'll create a new file called index.js. And basically here, this one will be our server. So first thing is that we need to import Express. And Express basically is a lightweight framework that simplifies building servers for us, okay? So that's why we're going to use Express today. And what we'll do now is create an instance of the Express server that we'll be using. So const app equal Express. Then what we'll do now is define a port that we'll be using for our server. So I'll create a variable that I can access whenever I want. I'll call it port, call it anything you like, and define any server you want. So I'll use 4000 for today. Then next thing we want to do is just set up a basic endpoint that we can test, and we will add a simple route that responds to incoming requests, okay? So don't feel too much overwhelmed if you're not used to this, because we'll go deep into it in next part of this tutorial. So app.get, then our route will be /only. Then the second argument is a function that accepts two elements as a parameter. So first is the request, and then the second is the response. Okay. Then inside our function, all what we'll do now is just rest, and we will send something. You get a response, and we will say, for example, welcome to the server. Now, next thing we want to do is make the server listen on a defined port and log some message for us when it is ready. So the way we can do it is app, so you make some space, app.listen. And also this listen will listen to the port, so the port we defined earlier. Then the second argument will be a function that will run while listening. For now, I'll just cancel log, and I'll say cancel log, and I will say server is running on port, then I'll just display the port number for now. Great, so we created our server. Now our package.json also is pointing and running, having a command that will run our server. Next thing we want to do now is actually listen to this, actually try this and test it and see if it's working. So go ahead back to your terminal and make sure you're pointing again to your backend folder and just run npm. And then the command name you defined right here, which is for me start. I will go ahead and run it, and you can see my script is right there. You can see my script is here that I defined. Now, it says here there's a problem, okay, and can't find the index.js. So let me check what I have done wrong at the moment. Well, I think I just have to remove this. I should not add that. And let's rerun this again. And there we go, you can see server is running on port 4000, and that is the message we posted right here in the lane number 11. So we are listening to the port. And if you go ahead to your browser, I'll just go and type localhost and point to the port that you used earlier for your server. So it was 4000 for me. And you can see here, welcome to the server. So in this chapter, basically as a recap, all what we have done is that we updated the start script, okay, to use NodeMan and Babel Node locally. And we installed Babel Node to fix that Babel Node error. If you didn't install it, you'll face one. Then we wrote a very basic Express server, okay, with a home route. So at the moment, we're just using the home route, and successfully started the server and tested it in our browser. So congratulations, your server is now up and running, and it's ready for us to add more functionalities in the upcoming chapters. So stay tuned for more, and as always, happy coding. Now that our server is up and running, it's time to set up a clean folder structure. This structure will make it easy to manage and expand our application as we build more features. In this tutorial, we are building a book club management app where users can track, review, and share books they have read. So let's dive right into it. So why we organize files? A well-organized project keeps your code base tidy, makes debugging and updates easier, and follows best practices for scalable applications. So we will create three main folders to separate. The first folder will be the controllers. So I'll call it controllers. Then the second folder will be models, and you have to be careful that should be inside your backend folder, okay? Models. Then we will have routes. Now, the models will define the data structure for your MongoDB, and the controllers will handle the logic for the requests and responses, and the routes will define our API endpoints. Now, in the controllers folder, we'll create a new file, and let's go ahead and do it. I will call it bookcontroller.js. And this basically will contain functions for handling, for example, book-related logic, such as adding a new book or fetching all the books. Now in the models folder, we'll create a new file, we'll call it book model.js. And this will define how a book is structured in our database. For example, does it have title, author, rating, and so on. In our roots folder, we will create a new file and I will call it bookroutes.js. And this basically will define the endpoints for managing books such as the get book or post books. Now in this chapter, we will connect our book club management app to a MongoDB database, and this will allow us to store, retrieve, and manage book data efficiently. So let's walk through the setup step by step, ensuring everything is clear and beginner friendly. So first thing is why we use MongoDB. MongoDB is a NoSQL database that's flexible and schema-less, perfect for applications like our book club management app. We will use Mangoes, a powerful library for interacting with our MongoDB. It simplifies the database operations with an easy-to-use API. Now, we need to go to our server and add some necessary imports and configurations to make sure our server can talk to our database. So first thing we have to do is import the mangoes. Next thing we want to do is import the body parser. So import body parser from body parser that we installed earlier as well. And this one basically will parse the JSON data from requests so we can use it in our backend. The next thing we want to import is the course. So I'll go ahead and import it. So import course from course. And also we installed this one earlier of this course too. And basically this one will help us or allow requests from a different domains, like our friends at app for application, for example. Next thing we want to do is add some middleware. So what we will do after defining our server, we will add some middleware. Okay, what we'll do for us, help us to parse that responses we were talking about. So we will use app.use, okay, and then we can add whatever things we want. So first I want to do this body parser dot URL encoded, okay, and this one I will add it have a property called extended. I'll set it to true. What to do is tell my app that I wanted to transform my responses to JSON. So I'll do the same thing, app.use, and then I'll say body parser.json. And next thing I want to do is use the course. So app.use, and I'll say use the course. Next thing is we need to define our MongoDB connection. And basically here what we'll do, we'll just set up the connections for our MongoDB. And first thing is that I'll just define the URL as a variable, so it's easy for me to use. I'll say Mango URL of your MongoDB. So usually you can do this way, MongoDB, then / localhost. And usually you don't have to add the port, it just pick it up by default. But when we run our app later, if you run into any issues, you might have to add it. But usually this one works. Then / and then your DB name, okay, which we'll create later. I'll call it book club DB. Okay, you can call again this one anything you like. Now next thing is we need to set up the connection, and the way we can do it is call the Mongoose we imported earlier. Okay, and we can say Mongoose dot, and then you can use the connect functionality. Okay, and this connect functionality accepts two arguments. The first is your URL, so I will pass the one I defined earlier, Mango URL. And the second argument is some parameters you can add. Okay, so it will be an object, and the first I want to do is use new URL parser, and I'll set it to true. Okay, basically here what I'm telling my connection is that I wanted to parse the connection strings correctly. Okay, the second thing I want to do is something called use unified topology, which uses the latest MongoDB connection management engine. So I'll use that as well. Then next thing I want to do, this one basically to be a promise. So it will give us back a promise. So I'll just do dot then. And for now, all what I will do, I'll just cancel log something, okay? Because we don't have anything really working at the moment. So I'll say cancel log, and I'll say success MongoDB. I like mango, so I just keep saying mangoes, mangoes, mangoes all the time, but it is MongoDB. Now, of course, in the end, we need to catch any errors if anything happens. So I'll do the catch, and then I'll just say error, and all what I will. Great. Now we set up the connection for our MongoDB. Next thing is we can do is, for example, point our app to use actually the routes that we defined earlier. But at the moment, we didn't really define any routes, so it will not work. But still, we'll just add it and go ahead, and later we'll fix it. And here I think I did import earlier wrong, so it just pick it up and did it for me when I was using the mangoes here. So that's great. Now what I will do, I will import actually the routes from, and the way we can pass the routes, we can just say routes, and then we wrap our app with that route. Okay, and click save. And this one will fail because we didn't create any routes yet, but that should be fixed in the next part of this course. So if you go ahead and run your terminal, so I'll go to my terminal, I'll control CY, and I'll make sure you're in your backend folder. Then we'll go and hit npm start again, and that should give us actually an error at the moment. You can see app is crashing, waiting for file changes. So if you scroll up, in this chapter, we will create a schema for our book club management app. So the schema defines the structure, rules, and types for data that can be stored in the database. It's like a blueprint for our data, ensuring consistency and validation. So let's dive right into it. So what is a schema? A schema in MongoDB via Mangoes helps you define the fields in your data, specify data type like strings, number, or booleans, and enforce validation rules like required field or default values. For example, a book must have a title, which will be required, a publication year must be a number, and the default status of a book can be available. Now let's create the book model.js. Okay, so we'll go back to our models folder, and we created earlier the book model.js. So we'll go ahead and open up that file. And now let's define our schema. And this is how to set up your schema for our books. First thing, we need to import mongoose from mangoes. Then what we'll do is we'll create a mongoose schema here. Okay. Oops. schema. So const schema, it will be equal to mongoose dot schema. So we create an instance of it. Now we will define the book schema. So the way we do it is very easy. So we say define a variable. You can call it anything you like. I'll call it book schema. Okay, and that will be equal to a new instance of the schema we created. So new schema. And then that will accept an object, which will be the type of your, or the interface, or whatever you can call it, for your book that you'll be storing in your database. So of course we need, for example, the title. Okay, and the title will have few things. For example, type, it will be a string. Also, you can tell if it's required or not. So I want it to be required, so say required. That will be true. So basically he was saying that the title field will be a mandatory field. Okay, let's say what other things we need. For example, the author, and that will be also type of string to be required. So just copy this and paste it there. We need, for example, the type. Okay, so we say John, and then we'll say, for example, it is of type string, but is not required. Okay, now also here I did mistakes. This string should be capital, so S. So S here as well should be capital. Okay, now next thing, for example, let's say we want to add published year. So let's add that too. So published year. Okay, and that of course will be type of number. And let's say also we want to have another type, or no, another property, and let's say call is available, for example, is available. And let's say this one will be type of Boolean. Okay, and let's say the default value for this one will be true, so it is available by default. Okay, let's add another property also. Let's call it, for example, ratings. And let's say this will be an array of numbers, so type, and it will be an array of numbers. Okay, and let's say the default value will be an empty array. Great. Let's now add something else, and let's add, for example, date. Okay, so different type. So let's say created add, and it will have type of date, and let's say the default value will be date.now. So when we create our schema, I'll make this one a little bit smaller so you can see our interface, and I'll close this as well. So when we create our schema, now we have to make it available to our applications. And now what we will do, I will go ahead and just export it and make it available. So we'll add export here. So make sure it is available to my application. That the schema is ready, Mongoose will use it to validate and structure any book data added to the database. So we have to save the file, and we will go ahead and save it. But before I do that, I'll open my index.js, and I'll just comment this line so I can run my app, because I didn't create any routes yet, and this one will fail. I will go ahead and run npm start. And hopefully we don't have any errors, so our schema is great. And you can see everything is running happily, and I can see the server is running on port 4000, and I can see that message coming up for successfully connected to MongoDB. Okay, which, if you remember, that's the one we added here, if you connected successfully to our Mongo database. Now you can go ahead and open up your Studio 3T, okay, and to see if our database has been created. And what I will do, I'll just go ahead and refresh. So when I open my Studio 3T here, I still can't see my database. So why I can't see it yet showing up? So MongoDB doesn't create a database until at least one document is added to a collection. This means Book Club DB will not appear in Studio 3T until data is inserted. So what we will do now, just so we can see the connection going on, I'm already connected. You can see I'm connected to the local host 272017, which is the default one. And you can see I run my command earlier, it's showing up as well. That's mean my connection it is successful, okay? But I can't see my database. So what we can do is we can add some sample data to just make sure our database is created. So here I just created a mock server which will mock for me a creation of a book data in our database, and that's what will help me actually to create our database because we don't have it yet. So what I have done, same thing we did in actual server, is that we imported the Mongos. I imported now the book schema we created. Then I created an instance model from that schema. Okay, so mongos.model, then a name here, whatever we want to name that model, and then the schema we created. And for me here, I just call it model. Then we connect it to Mongo, same we did in our server. And then here, I'm just cancel login if I connected to MongoDB correctly. And all the magic happened right here. So here I defined an async function where I created an instance of my model, okay, with some details or data, dummy data here. Then I saved it to our Mongo database. Then I'm just cancel login that the book was added successfully. And then finally, when we are done, either success or fail, make sure you close your connection. So this basically will just help us to create some data to help us again trigger the creation of actual database. Now, let's go ahead and what we'll do, I'll just cd backend, make sure I'm in my backend folder, and I can just do node, then my file I created, so add book.js. Hit enter. And you can see here I have successfully connected to MongoDB, and also the sample book we created has been added successfully as well. Now if you go to your studio, you should see your new database showing up right there. If you don't see it, just go ahead and do right click and refresh all, and then you should see it showing up right there for you. So that is the database we created, Book Club DB. Okay, and if you open it up, you can see the collections, and you'll have at the moment we have only one collection. Okay, and if you open it up, you can see here the data we created with all its details as well. So now that our schema is set up, we are ready now to create API endpoints to perform operations like adding actually books and fetching all the books or updating a book. And we use this schema to interact with the database via Mongo's model. So stay tuned for the next chapter. We will build a CRUD operations for our book club management app. In this chapter, we are going to add a post endpoint so we can send new books to our database. It sounds fancy, but don't worry, we will break it down step by step in plain, simple English. So let's dive right into it. First thing is that we need to create a model. So think of a model as like your blueprint of your database. It tells MongoDB how the data should look like. So earlier we created the schema, and all what I have to do now is just create a model on top of that schema. And that is very easy. So we can just go here, do export cons, and you can call your model again anything you like. I'll call it book, and that will be equal to Mongo's dot model. Then you'll have the name of your model. I'll call it book. And also the second parameter will be your actual schema that you created, and that will be our book schema. Okay. So this basically what we have done here is just we create a model around our schema so we can use later in our controllers. Now next thing I want to do is go inside the controller, and I'll go inside our book controller that we created earlier, what's still empty. And now this is like the brain behind our post request. And this is where we tell the app how to handle saving a new book. Okay, so go ahead, open your file, and you'll add some code here. First thing you want to do is import the model we created. So I'll import book, and actually it should be this way, book from model, book model. Okay. Next thing you want to do is basically define a function. And this function is the one we'll be handling the request. So I'll go export const, I will call my function add new book, and you can call this anything you like, and this will be an async function, of course, and that will take two arguments, your request and also your response. Okay, and basically what we'll do here, we'll create a try catch block. We will come inside our try block, and first thing we'll do is create a book using that request body. So create book using the request body. Okay, and that is very easy. So const new book. Okay, and that will be equal to new book, the model we created, and we imported it as well. And then here we'll pass the request.body basically. Now next thing is we want to save it to database. Okay, and the way we do it is also easy. So const saved book, and that will be equal to await. So I want to make sure our book has been saved. Await new book. Okay, dot save. Great. Now, when our book is saved, we want to send a response with the saved book. Okay, so send a response with the saved book. And the way you can do it, we just do response dot status, and let's say status 201 dot JSON, and then we pass that JSON the saved book we get back from our database. Great. Now, if an error happened, then of course you can handle it any way you like, but we'll do a standard way as well. So we just return a response with a status of 400. We are passing the error message to our error. Now, the key points here is that the rec.body that we have here, this one here, it contains the data that user sends, like the title of the book and the author of the book. Then the new book.save, it saves that data to the database. And if something goes wrong, we just send an error back to the users. And phew, that's the hard part. Okay, so let's move on. Now, next thing is to create a route. If you remember earlier, we created the route, but it is empty at the moment. There's nothing there. And that's why in our server, we had to comment this line. Okay, now we'll go actually make it work. So go ahead and open your book route if you have it already. Otherwise, you can create a routes folder and then create the book routes.js. And first thing we want to do is import the controller we created. So add new book, and then we'll go ahead here and define your route. So const routes, and that will accept the app as a parameter. And all what we will do now is just define a new route. So app dot route, and here you'll define your endpoint, which is the route. So we'll call it slash books, for example. We do dot post, so creating a post call. Then we pass actually the controller we created. So add new book, and that's it. And basically we just go and export default, and we export our routes. Simple as that. Then we go back to our server and we just uncomment this line here in 23. Okay, now what we will do, we'll go back to our terminal, make sure you are in the backend folder, and we'll run npm start, and let's hopefully everything's working fine without any errors, and everything looks great. Now time to use Postman, so go ahead and open Postman. So I'll just open Postman, and then go ahead and click plus if you don't have any window yet open. So it creates for you a new window request. Then we'll go and select the post call. Okay, and inside here basically we will add our URL, and if you remember, our server is running on localhost on 4000 ports. So 4000 is for me. If you're using different one, just use the port you're using. type slash books and make sure this one is correct. Okay, so go ahead and open up your code and make sure you already type the same spelling as well. Okay, now this looks good for me, so I'll go back to my books and then we will go to the body and we'll select this option right here. Okay, and here basically we'll add all the values. And if you remember our schema, we have a little bit long one, but not all of them are mandatory. Okay, so for the time being, I'll just fill in the title and the author as well because they are required. And make sure again your spelling is correct. So I'll go ahead to my Postman and I'll add title and I'll say my first book, Postman, and the next one was author, and that was me, so I'll write Lulu. Okay, now this looks great. Actually, now I open my Visual Studio Code and notice something here which is red. So I'll just go ahead and open up this and check what is going wrong. So it says can't find this module, book routes imported in this file. So actually what I had to do is I'm using module-based systems. So I have to go back to my package.json and define the type of module and also use .js whenever I'm importing. Okay, so if you're facing the same issue, maybe that will be a solution for you. Now I can see now everything is green. My server is running on the port 4000 and I'm successfully connected to MongoDB. So I'll go ahead and open again my Postman. And now I will try to send my request. So let's go and click send. And there you go. You can see that we got a 201 successfully created. And I can see my data has been created. Now to make sure everything's working properly, I'll just go ahead and open my studio right here. And I'll just go ahead and go to my database. And what I will do, I'll just refresh all to make sure I have the latest. I'll go open it up and go open my collection books. And there we go. You can see this is a dummy data we created earlier just to test. And this is the one I created using the Postman. So my first book, Postman, and the author is Lulu. So a recap for what we have done in this chapter is we created a model. So what I will do, close this. We created a model that defined the structure of our book. Then we created a controller to handle saving books for us. Then after that, we created a route or defined a route that will connect the controller to the app. And finally, we tested everything using Postman to make sure that our API is working as expected. And that is it. You just have created your first post endpoint for your book management app. In the next tutorial or next chapter, we'll create a get endpoints to fetch all the books from database. And don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay up to date with all the videos coming up. So I'll see you in the next one. Now we are going to create a get endpoint that allow us to fetch all the books from our database. And it is super easy and I'll walk you through every step in plain simple English as well. So let's jump right into it. So first thing is we need to create a get function in our controller. Like if you remember I said the controller is your brain that handles all these API calls. So the controller is where we define the logic to fetch all the books from our database. So what we'll go, we just go inside our controller and create a new function. And what we'll call it, export const. We can call it, for example, get all books. Okay, you can call also this anything you like. And this will be also an async function that takes in a request and also a response. Then we'll have our try catch block. So try catch block. And inside our try block, it will be really simple. First thing we need to do is find all books in the database. Okay. And what we can do here, we just can do easily const and create a variable. I'll call it books. And that will be equal to await. So we want to always await our response. Book, which is the model we created. Okay. dot find. So you can use a find function. And that will give you back all the books basically. And the next thing you want to do is just send the list of the books as the response. So as we get the list of the books, we want to send them within our response. So we can send them like this. So response will give, for example, a status of 200. This is successful. And we will send it as a plain JSON response. And we'll pass on the books list we got from our database. The error will send a 5-hand error with the error message if something goes wrong, basically. And that is it, simple as that. I can see my terminal still running perfectly and everything is green. Now we create our controller. The next thing we want to do is go to our routes, and we need to create a route that links that slash books endpoint to the get all books controller. Okay, and that means we need to import our controller, so get all books. Okay, and then we'll go to our definition here. And remember, we added the post. We can also add something called get. Okay, and that get will pass on the controller we used or we imported. So get all books. Simple as that. Now the get method, it is connected to our controller, and time for us now to test. So my server is still running, so I can go to my Postman, and what I will do, I'll create a new window, and what I will do is just copy the same path we have there because the same endpoint, and instead of post we'll be using get. Okay, and what I will do, I'll just go and run this, and you can see I got a response of 200, which is amazing. And I got the list of my books as well. You can see here we have 3 books. And if I open up my studio, if you remember, first time I created dummy data, we had 2 books, and then the third one right here. Actually, we can even test more. Let me open up my Postman. And what I will do, I will create a new book. I'll say book 1, and I'll say Lulu 1, and let's send this. Okay, so there we go. I create one successfully. I will go back to my get call and I will run it again. Okay, so send, and you can see 1, 2, 3, and 4. So as a recap, we created a controller function that we call it get all books to fetch all the books for us. Then we linked this function to a get route using slash books endpoint. Then we tested the endpoint using the Postman and Studio 3D as well. So awesome work, everyone. You now have a fully functional get endpoint that fetches all books from your database. Next, we'll move on to create an endpoint to get a single book by its ID. So make sure you like and subscribe and hit that notification bell for any updates in my channel. Okay, now we are going to take things up a notch by creating a get endpoint to fetch a specific book using its ID. This will be helpful when you want to retrieve details about a single book. And don't worry, I'll break it down as well step by step. So let's get into it. First thing, of course, we need to create a controller for fetching a book by ID. So this first step is to write, of course, your logic of fetching the book by its ID, and to be done inside the book controller file. So we'll go and define a new function. So const, or actually export const, and I'll call it get book by ID. And that, of course, will be also an async function as well. We should take 2 arguments, the request and the response. And what we will do here, of course, we'll have a try catch block again. So if there are any errors, they are catch. And we will go inside here. So first thing we want to do basically is to find the book by its ID. So find the book by its ID. Okay, so we'll create a new variable const. We'll call it book. Okay, and we will await for the response, and it will be the book, the model we created earlier, dot find by, and you can see here the IntelliSense is helping me with the built-in functions for Mongo. So this is a function called find by ID. Oops, find by ID. And then here we will pass actually the book ID that we will pass later in the parameter. So in our request dot params, oops, dot params dot, and we will call it book, or actually big lowercase book, then ID, okay? And this param will define later as well. Now, this is the first step. Now, if the book is found, so if book is found, then we want to send the book as a response, right? So send the book as a response. Okay, so we'll create our response. So res dot, we'll have a status of 200, which is successful. And then we will just translate our response to a JSON. So .json, and then we'll pass on the book we got back from our database. Great. Now, if we don't find the book, then we will give back also a response with a status of 404, means not found. And what we will do, pass on a JSON response with a message. And this you can do anything you like, but I would say, for example, book not found. Great. So here basically we handle book not found. So this is in our try section. In the catch section, again, we'll do the same thing as we did before. We'll just catch the error. And what I will do, I'll give back a response with status of 500. That will pass on the message we got back by default. So a quick recap before we move to the next step is that the rec.params.bookid that we have in line 30 here, that actually grabs the book ID from the URL we'll be passing on later. And book.findById searches the database for a book matching the provided ID. And the 404 response, if the book doesn't exist, we return a friendly error message. And then in the catch block, we have a 500 response, which handles unexpected server issues. Great. So we are done with controller. Now I hope that you know what will be the next thing. So the next step will be actually back to our route and define a route that will handle this new function we created. So what we'll do, we'll go and actually import the new controller, of course, we created. So get book by ID. And then we'll come inside our definition of the route and we'll define a new route. Okay, so app.route. And then the route here will do this way. So it will be /book, okay, /, and the next thing have to be a dynamic field, okay, and dynamic endpoint. So we'll do 2 dots like this and then book ID. Just make sure whatever parameter you name here, it is the same one we are naming right there, okay? So this is our new endpoint or new route we are defining, and we will have a get call using this route basically. So we want to retrieve the book ID details. We have to pass the controller we created earlier, so get book by ID. And that's it, basically, simple as that, very simple. So the dynamic route we defined right here, basically, it lets us pass that book ID directly in our URL. The get method connects to the get book by ID controller. I can see my service still running my terminal and everything looks successful even after my changes, which is great. If your server is not running, please go ahead and run it npm start. Then we'll go and open our Postman again. And what I will do, I'll create a new window. And I will do get call and we'll do localhost, then your port number. Then it will be /book and not books, okay, because the route we created was /book and then /ID, okay. And what I will do, I will go here to the get and pick up anyone. So let's pick up this one. I will use this ID, okay. So this is one way you can get an ID. Otherwise, you can go to your studio and you can grab the ID from right here, right click and copy the value. Okay, so I'll go ahead. I already have ID. So I'll go back here and I'll do / and then put the ID right there. Okay, so this is one way to do it. Another way you can do is, for example, you can do /book and then you can come to the params here and you can put here the book ID. Okay, So same parameter we named right there, okay? So the book ID and then the value, you can put the value there. I'll go ahead and run this. And you can see I got 200 response back with the details of the book by ID. So we create a controller function which called getBookById to fetch a book by its ID, okay? And then we link this controller to a dynamic route which is /book/book/bookid. Then we tested this endpoint using Postman and verify that it really works. So this get endpoint is super useful, especially when you need to display detailed information about a specific book in your app. And that is it, you just have built a get endpoint to fetch a book by its ID. Next we'll explore how to update a book details. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with anyone learning the MERN stack. So stay tuned for the next chapter. Now we'll be building an endpoint to update the details of a book using a put request. So this is super useful for editing book information like the title, the author, the type, or any data you want. And don't worry, I will keep things simple and beginner friendly just like always. So let's jump right into it. So first step again, I hope by this time you know the approach, how it works. So we'll go to the controller and create an update function to update a book for us. Okay, so I have my controller open here. I'll go and define a new function, so export cons, and I will call it update book, for example. Okay, and this will be of course a sync function as well, which takes in the request and also the response. Then we'll have our try catch block. And inside our try block, basically, the first thing we want to do is find the book by ID and then update it with a new data. So find book by ID and update its data. Okay. So the way we do it, I'll define a new variable called const and I'll call it updated book. And then we'll do an await because we want to await for the response. We are checking our database. Then book, okay, the model we created earlier, dot. Then MongoDB also have a function called find by ID and update. Very simple, very meaningful, okay? And inside this function, basically, we'll pass on few parameters, okay? The first one is the request, okay? Dot param, same we did for getting a book by ID. So request.param dot book ID. Okay, so we need the book ID, which we'll access from the URL. Then the second thing is we need the body, so the new data for the book. Okay, so that will be within the request.body. Then the third argument, it will return the updated document. Okay, so it will be an object with new as true. We got our updated book from our database. Now let's check if it does exist. So if updated book exists, okay, then we will give back a response with 200 and we'll pass on our updated book details, okay? So response of 200 and then we are passing on the updated book we got from our database. Otherwise, if the book does not exist, okay, we will throw in an error of 404 that book doesn't exist, okay? So response.status 404, then a message we're passing on book not found, okay? Now, this message, of course, can be specific to whatever you want. So it's just for demonstration of today. And for the error catch block, of course, we need to catch the error and we'll give back a 500 status error with the error message coming from the catch. Simple as that. Now, as soon as I save this, I can see again my terminal, my server is running successfully, so there are no issues. And let's do a quick recap before we move to the routes. So the request here, .param.bookid, it extracts actually the book ID from the URL. Then the request.body contains the updated book details sent in the request. And then find by ID and update a Mango's method that finds a document by ID and updates it in one step. Okay, it does for us all the job in just one go. Now, next thing we have to do is going to the route, okay? And what we will do is we will update actually this route here because we'll be using the same structure. We need a book ID to do whatever we want to do with that book. So let's go and import our controller we created. So update book. And then here I'll come and add a put method. So dot put, and that put will pass on the controller we created. So update book. The book ID here basically in the route makes it dynamic, allowing us again to update that specific book. And the put method connects the update book controller to our dynamic route. Now, let's go and test this. So make sure you have your server running. Then what I will do, I will go to Postman, okay? And I will use actually the same URL we used before here to get a book ID. And let's actually, what I will do, I'll open my database. And remember here when I created the dummy data, I have the same data created twice. So I'll pick up one of them and I will change it. So what I will do, I'll copy the value of the ID here. And then I'll go back to my Postman and I'll change this ID right there. Oops, I'll just remove whatever other things I copied as well. And here I will do a put method, okay? And then we can go actually to the body and we select this option right here. And then we can add here whatever fields we want to change. So I want to change, for example, to title. And also I updated book 1, okay? And let's say also the author I want to change. And I'll say updated author 1, okay? And let's go and run this and see if this is working. And there we go, we can see we got a true handback response. It have been updated successfully. You can see the genre here still function, available still true as well, okay? And the publish year also still 1925, but we just updated the title and the author. Now we can do one thing, we can go back to our list and you can see it's still not yet updated, so we just have to go and refresh. And there we go. As soon as I do that, you can see the new details. So the first element, we updated it, and we can see the title has changed. It's not anymore The Great Gatsby. And also the author name has changed. So this confirms as that update function is working successfully. So again, let's do a quick recap. We created a controller function, which called update book, that updates the book details for us using its ID. Then we add a new put route for our /book ID. And then in the end, we just tested our details we tested our API using Postman and also the study to verify that everything is working properly. And that is it. You have successfully added the ability to update books in your app. Next, I will tackle how you can delete a book. So don't forget to save your work. And if you Now in this chapter, we're setting up the delete endpoint for our book management app. So this endpoint will let us remove the books from the database. So by end of this video, you will know how to delete a book with confidence. So let's break this in very easy steps as well. So first things, of course, we need is a controller function that handles deleting a book. So I'll go to my controller file and define a new function that I need to export as well. I'll call it delete book, and that will be an async function that takes in a request and a response as well. And we will define a try catch block as well. And inside our try block, first thing we want to do is extract the book ID from the params. Okay, so I hope now you are familiar with how to do this. So const book ID, and that will be equal to our request.params book ID. Oops, book ID. The next thing is to use the Mongoose to delete the book for us. So use the Mongoose to delete the book by ID. So the way we can do it, again, we just await and we use the model book dot delete one. So there is a function within Mongoose we can use, which is delete one. And then we can pass on the ID of the element or the document we want to delete. So look at the parameter of underscore ID and then pass on the ID that you just defined, which is book, oops, book ID. Okay, so the one we defined it right there. Now, after we delete, we need again to send a response or a message saying that it has been successfully deleted. So we do response.json and then you send a message, whatever message you want. You can also add a status if you want to. And then, of course, if an error happened, we couldn't delete the item, we need to catch it. And then we'll give a status of 500. Now we just pass on a message saying that we failed to delete this book and also pass on the error for more error details. And this is now like a recap what we are doing here. We extracted basically the book ID from the URL parameters, and we used the Mongo's delete one function, that's the method to remove the book from the database, and then we returned a confirmation message if everything goes well. Great. Now, next thing is to go to the route, and feel free to stop the video and try by yourself. So we'll go back to our route. Again, we'll be using this route here because we'll be accessing some dynamic ID. And what we'll do is just add a delete. And then, of course, we have to pass on the controller we created. So I have to import it. So delete book. And I'll just pass it on to my delete book. Great, easy as that. So this route now listens to the delete request at book slash the book ID, where this ID is the part which is dynamic and accept the ID of the book you want to delete. Now, next thing, of course, you have to run your server. Mine is still running and I can see it successfully is running. So we'll go back to our Postman. And what I will do inside of put we had here, I want to delete. Okay. And let's say I want to delete this one here that I created first time when I was trying to create dummy data. So I'll say go copy and copy the value, and I will go back to my Postman and I will go here and paste that ID and just remove whatever extra things it's added on the top. Okay, and for this one, you don't need any body request, anything. We just need the ID which is passed on as a parameter. Now let's go and try this, send. And you can see here I got 200 message back, book successfully deleted. Now let's go check our database. So this one should go away. I'll go and refresh. And there we go, that has been deleted and I only have now 3 books left in my database. Now, few things you need to learn, like for example, let's say if you face any issues, so you need to learn how to debug things, okay? So if something doesn't work, there are few issues you can fix them, okay? So for example, if the error book not found, you need to double check that the book ID it is in your request, okay? And also make sure that you don't have any typos in your code when you're creating your controllers or your routes as well. Then make sure, of course, your server is running. It happened to me many times that my server is not running and I keep trying in my Postman, it doesn't work, and then I just lose time just trying to find out what is the error. But basically, just my server was not running. So make sure you run npm start before you try to work with your Postman. Now, a recap for this chapter, what we have done as well. So we create basically a controller to help us to delete a book using the ID. Then we went to the route. Second thing is the route. So we connected the delete method to our dynamic endpoint. And then we tested this via Postman and the database. And great job, you have successfully created the delete point. Now you can move on to the front end and bring up your app to the live. So let's get into it. Okay, now in this chapter, we are diving into the front end for our book management app, and we will add TailwindCSS for styling and set up a clean folder structure to keep our project organized. And don't worry, I will guide you step by step and make this one easy for you. So first things first, package you want to use for handling CSS. Okay, and for today's video, we'll make it very simple. I will be using TailwindCSS for styling, so it will help me to avoid any additional CSS code after, right? So we'll go back to my project, open a new terminal, and make sure I am in the front end folder. So cd front end. There we go. So first things, of course, I need to do is install Tailwind CSS and also the post CSS and auto prefixer as well. So I'll go ahead and do that too. So all what you have to do basically is just follow the steps in the documentation. Okay. Now I'll go ahead. I'll just make this one here smaller. I'll make my terminal bigger so you can see what I'm doing. So npm install -d Tailwind CSS, post CSS, and auto prefixer. I'll hit enter. And it will go ahead and install that for me. And I'll open the package.json as well for the front end folder so we can see things adding up. There we go. So we see the post CSS, for example, is there. You can see the Tailwind CSS as well. So that is great. Now, next thing is we need to initialize our Tailwind CSS and create a config file. That will be easy just using npx Tailwind CSS space init. And that create a config file for us. So I'll create also, I'll open the file too, and I should see it showing up right there. Okay, so when that one is created, go ahead and open it up. And basically here, I will add a very simple configuration. I'll just update the content property here. So it can point off to the folders or the files I wanted to read the CSS from it. Okay, so basically here I'm saying it can read from the root index.html file. So if I add CSS from Tailwind, that should work, and also any file inside our source folder as well. Okay, so that's all what I'm doing right here. I'll go and save it. Now, next step is to add some directives, Tailwind directives to our CSS. So what I will do, you'll open the root CSS file, which if you open up, for example, main.tsx, it's reading the CSS file right there. So that is our main CSS. So I'll go ahead and open it up, and I'll remove everything from here. I don't need it. And I'll just add these directives right there. Okay. And again, if you're confused where I'm getting all this, everything is right here in my documentation. Okay. I'm just following up everything step by step. Now, we installed Tailwind CSS. We add a configuration. Let's first test if this is working. So I can go ahead to my app. And first thing, I'll remove the title here. I'll say that's book management application. Okay. And what I will do, I will just save this and then go to my app.tsx and actually clean up everything here as well. I don't need these. I don't need these. And I don't need the app.css as well. And I don't need any of those content too. So I'll just remove everything. Okay, for now, I'll just add an H1 and I'll say welcome to the book application. Okay, or books application. Now let's try our CSS. So I'll say class name equal, and let's say text, for example, we add the size, let's say 3XL, okay? That is a Tailwind class. And if I hover, I can see what are the details of that. And let's say, for example, I want to do color, text red, for example, and I can choose a color and let's say red 900. And let's save this. And what I will do, I will just go and run my application. So npm run dev, and again in the front end folder. And let's test this in our UI. So I'll just copy this link and go back to my UI. And let's run our front-end application and see if this is working. You can see this is not actually working, okay? So it's not picking up our styles. So when you're using Vid with Tailwind CSS, we need to add one more extra step to make it work. So you have to go ahead to the vid.config.ts and we need to add a new property which called CSS, then post CSS, then plugins, then Tailwind CSS, which you import from Tailwind CSS. Now, if I save this and I go back to my browser, I should see now my app have some styling. And you can see on the right side here, when I select the header, I can see those styles coming through as well. This is great, which means our Tailwind CSS now is now set up and ready for us to use. Now we'll just go ahead and organize a little bit our folder structure. And what we will do, I'll just close all these things. And then I'll just go back and close this as well. Source, and that's it. Okay. Now, what we want to do is inside the SRC folder, we want to add some other folders just to handle the structure properly before we start. So I'll create a new folder which we'll call components. Components. Okay, and basically this one will hold for us all the reusable components we need. I already created the pages folder here, which I moved the app.tsx inside there as well. So here basically if you create any page, it should go there as well. Okay, then we'll create a utils folder that we may need later as well. Okay, and for styling, I'm not going to add a style folder because I'm going to stick to time with CSS, and I will try my best actually not to add any extra specialized CSS. Okay, if you need more CSS for yourself, just go ahead and add, for example, a style folder where you can add your CSS there as well. Okay, so here's what we have accomplished now in this chapter. We just installed and configured Taiwan CSS. So it's like a modern style library to make our styling easy. We cleaned up a little bit the folder structure. We created a logical structure for our components and pages and utilities. And also we simplified the app component by removing unnecessary code and add a basic Tailwind CSS as well. Now in the next step, we will start actually building the actual pages and component for our book management app. Now let's start actually building our application. And first thing we want to do is a way to load the data we have in our database using the API we created and list the list of the books we have at the moment. So first thing we have to do is I'll stop my server for the front end. And I'll use Axios to call the APIs. You can use any method you like fetch or like 10-stack query. So I'll keep it very simple. So I'll use Axios, so npm install Axios. And while that's installing, I will go and open my app.tsx, okay? And whatever code I write at the moment, that will not be really the best practices in React. So if you're interested at that, I will add a section for the refactoring phase as well. So I will go ahead and import a few things. So I'll come here. So I say import Axios from Axios. And also I will need the state and use effect for calling my API and the state for storing the data I will get loaded from my API. So I'll import React and also import use state and also use effect. Okay, from React. Again, if you're not familiar with this concept, I have full tutorials in my channel about React and also the hooks in React. So these are hooks basically we're going to use from React. Now, I import whatever things I need. Okay, so next I want to go do is go inside my component and actually I'll just rewrite it. Okay, so I'll say const, I'll make it a functional component, app equal, and it's giving back these elements. Okay, so inside my app basically I'll create a state, should be like a bucket to store the details for me. I'll call const and I'll using the use state. Okay, and this use state basically will give me back few things, and I'll give it default value of an empty array, so I don't have any list. Okay, so here for storing all books. Now the use state will give me a few things. First, the data, okay, or the state value. I'll call it book. You can call it anything you like. I'll call it actually books. And then the second argument is, or the second value is a function that help you set this state, okay? And usually you use set and then the name of your state to keep consistent, okay? So set books. Now, next thing I will do is use effect hook to get my API call made. Okay, so that will accept an arrow function where we do our all logic. So the second argument basically will be a dependency array which tells when this use effect should run. For my app today, I only wanted to run first time, so I'll just add an empty array, okay, which means only load first time when my component mount. Now, inside my use effect, so use effect doesn't handle by default async call, so we have to define another function that will handle the load or the trigger of our API call, then trigger it again. So I'll define a new function called fetch books, okay, and that will be an async function. And here I'll use the try catch block, okay, and inside our try I'll create a new variable called response, and that will be equal to await Axios dot get, okay, and then we add the endpoint of the API we are using. And if you remember, we're using our localhost at the moment, so http// localhost, and we are using the port 4000, okay, and if you remember the endpoint we created in our routes, it is /books, okay, so it will be /books. And when we get our response back, I will set that response in my state here, so I can access it later and display it in my UI. So set books, and I'll say response dot data. Great. Now, if an error happened, I will just cancel an error to my browser at the moment, but usually you should have an error state as well. We can install the error, and then you handle it also very efficiently, okay? But we'll keep it simple for today. So I defined my function that handled the API call. Now I have to trigger this, so we are still inside our use effect, okay? Great. Now for debugging, I'll just go ahead and console log this and see if my API giving me my data back. So we'll console log the books. So whatever the state you name here, that's the one we are console logging there. Now I'll go back. Actually, I have to run my front-end app. So npm run dev, and let that run, and then go back to my browser, and I'll go to my console. And you can see here, actually, we are facing some error. So it's saying that there's an error network. So I'll go ahead and fix that. And actually my URI is wrong, so it should be local host. Let's save this and let's try again. Let's go back down, and there we go. So if you remember, we have 3 items in our database. So we are getting an array back with 3 objects with all the details there. Great. Now we know our API is giving us back our details. The next thing actually is create a list component that will display all these things for us. So we will go inside our front end, so close this, and go inside our components. I'll create a new component which is called books list.tsx. Okay, and then I'll generate a component here. And then this component basically will accept some prop, which is the books. Okay, so I'll call books. And this books basically is the one we're going to map through and display it, which means for now, what I will do, I'll just save this and try to access this component from my app. So I'll go and import that books list, and I will come inside my app.tsx, and what I will do, I'll just add some little bit better styling. So book management app, I'm just adding different styling here, and then I will do book list, and that accept now property, which is books. Okay, and basically this books here is the prop name that we are passing down here, and that will be equal to whatever array you created. And I know the array is also named is books, so I'll just write that state right there. Great. Now let's close this, and I'll go back to my book list. So my book list basically it will be just a displaying component. Okay, so that will be very simple. All what I will do, I'll just go and remove this now from here and just do return, and then we will have a UL list basically. Okay, and the UL list, it will have some styling, and then I'm mapping through the items. Then I'm reading each item, which I call it book within my books, and then I'm having a key. So whenever you map in React, the first parent element should have a key, okay? And that key should be unique. So I know my IDs are unique, so I'm just reading the IDs as a key. Then I'm just adding some classes for styling. And this actually I'll need later. So what I will do, I remove it from now to remove any confusion. Then all that I'm doing is just displaying the book title and the author as well. Let's save this and let's go to our UI. And you can see here I have my list successfully rendering. Okay, so this is my book name and this is the author, book name, the author, and book one again by Lulu1, which is the author as well. Now, next thing I want to do, for example, let's say I want to display more details. So you can see here, this is the list, but I'm not displaying more details, it could take more spaces. And let's say, for example, when I click an item, I want them to display the more details of that book below my list, okay? So what we will do, we'll go back to our app. So we need basically a way to track which book you have selected, okay? And it needs to be accessible to all our apps. So that's why we'll come back again to the app and we'll create a new state here. And let's say call it current book. Then we'll have a setter function. So set current book. And that will be equal to use state. And default value will be null, okay, if nothing is selected. Then we have to pass on actually these details down. And what I will do, I'll come here to the book list and I'll pass on actually that setter function, okay? So I'll say handle set current book, okay? That's the property name. And I'll pass it the setter function I defined. So set current book. And this property basically we'll pass it down to our child component, so we have to read it as well. And I want this actually to trigger whenever someone click an item in my list. So I'll add onClick function, okay, and that will be equal to an arrow function that by default when you click it, it should pass on actually the book details, okay. So I'll go ahead and say handle set current book, and then we are passing the current book you selected. So this one basically will take the book and store it for us back up in our state right there, okay. Then we'll create a new component to display the details. So I'll say book details.tsx, then generate a functional component. And basically this component will just read a property of book and then display all details for us. So what I will do, so you don't see me typing random CSS, I'm just displaying here some styling. So I'm saying selected book, then I'm just displaying the title, the author, the genre, and also the published date. And also our components will read that book from the parent, so it will accept that as a property. And I will go ahead and also pass on that. So what I will do in my app.tsx, I will say if I have actually a current book selected, okay? So if it's not null, actually someone selected an item, then display my new component. So if current book exists, then display the book details, okay? So I'll import that and that accepts a property which is book, okay? Which we added right there. And that book will be taking a value which is from your state called current book, okay? Simple as that. Now let me go and test this. So I'll just hard reload and then I will go and just click the first one and you can see my book details has been updated. I've selected the second one. That is the second one. Now you might have noticed that some files are red, okay, like here. So it's complaining about the book and also the other file is complaining about the properties. That's because I'm using TypeScript. So if you're using JavaScript, you'll be fine. But because I'm using TypeScript, I need to add a type interface for my components. So I'll go ahead and create actually a types folder. And then I'll create a type file for book. Okay, and I'll call it .ts. And all what I will do, I will just add an interface here for my book. So I know it have ID, it have title, author, gender, and also the published date as well. Okay, then I have to go back actually to my app.tsx okay? And I have to import that type. So import, and let me see if I export it. Yes, I did. So import book, okay, from the type I created right there. Now, one thing, I don't want to have any confusions between what is the type, what is the component. I will add an I in front of it, so I know it's for interface, which means I'll go right there as well and add an I in front of it too. Okay. Now we have done that. I have to go and update my state. So I'll say this state, it will be of type of book, okay, but array of that book, basically. So that's what we are saying here. And again, because I forgot the I, so it knows that, so I add the I. So I'm saying it is of type book I, okay? Now, the second one as well, I have to add a type there too. So that will be of type either book interface or it will be none because we have none as a default value. Great. Now we have to go to our book list and fix that too. So I have to go and import the book I interface as well. And I will go and create an interface, const interface. I'll call it book list props interface. Okay. And actually I should not do the const here, I should remove that. So interface, then I'm saying I will have actually books. Okay, so these books, and they'll be of type of array of book I. Okay, then the second thing will be a function, which we passed right here. So handle set current book, and that will be type of function. Okay, that will take a parameter of book, which will be of type book I. Okay, and to give us back in the end void because it doesn't return us anything basically. So we define the type of our props. Now we have to pass it to our component. So we say this component's type of React.functional component, which is accepting props of type book in list in props interface. Great. So you can see now this one is all happy and good. Same thing we will do for other components as well. So I will go right here and import also the book I that I created. And same thing I did here. I'll just copy actually this one called book details props interface. And that accept only a book, which is type of book I. And then we'll pass on this one here. So React dot functional component, which is accepting this interface. So you can see now everything is happy and everything is green. Okay. Now a recap for what we have done for this chapter basically is that we just installed Axios so we can fetch the data from our backend. Then we organized the project by splitting code into very reusable components. So we created a book list to handle rendering the list and book details components to handle the details of a book. And then we set up the state in our app.tsx file to manage the books and selected books as well. And we use TailwindCSS to style our app nicely for the demo of today. Now, there are better approaches you can, for example, do. For example, in real-time applications, I will not be putting all this code here in my components, okay? You'll use something called custom hooks. But again, because this is a beginner-friendly tutorial for the MERN stack, I will not go into depth into best practices, but feel free to check playlists about the best practices in React if you want to look more into this. Okay, now next thing is to create a functionality where we can add a new book to our database. So what we will do, we'll take an approach of creating a model that you can click a button and it will open up with a form. You fill it and then you can fill on details and then click save button and it will save those details for you. So that might sound a lot, but it is very simple as you take it step by step. So first thing, of course, we need a way to track if our model is open. That's why we have to create actually a state in our app.tsx that will handle for us tracking that, okay? So we define a new state, we call it is model open. Then this function helps us to switch the value of that state. Next thing I want to do basically is create that model. So I'll go create the model. I'll call it add and also edit because later we'll use for edit. Book modal.tsx. Okay, so for now, just generate it, and that's it. So what I want to do basically is that when someone click a button, so basically I need a button right there that will help me to do that. So I will add that button as well. So that button basically, when you click it, it should trigger a function that I need to define that will switch the pop-up for me, the view of the pop-up. Okay, so I'll go here and define const handle add book. Okay, and that will be a function. And all what will do for me is set is modal open to true. Great, now we know we have a way that we can show our pop-up. But what is our pop-up? So let's create a child component for the pop-up. So add edit book model. Okay, and I'll pass it a property which called is open. And then we will read from the state is modal open. Okay. Next thing I want to do is a functionality basically to close it, right? So the state is an upper level in the parent and app.tsx, so we need to pass on down a function that can handle the state in the upper level. So this is usually not the best practice, it's called prop threading, but for a beginner-friendly start, this is the best approach to follow. Now, we'll go and do on close. I'll call this property on close, and I'll define a arrow function which basically, if it gets triggered, it will set my state to false. So that will close my pop-up for me. Okay. Now, next thing I want to do is have a saving functionality. So when I fill a form and I have new details on my book, I want to update actually my state here. So it gives us the latest list available for us to show in our UI, and it goes back down to our book list to render it for us. So I need on save functionality. Oops. So I need to add that on save, okay, and that will be equal, for example, fetch books. And what I will do, I'll explain you this, what it will do, okay? So fetch books, and this fetch books basically will be a function that we used earlier, which is this one, which means I need to use this first time when my component renders and also other times as well. Therefore, I'll move it out from my use effect and just paste it out here. Simple as that. So basically, when I save it, to go and trigger my API call again, okay, and give me back the latest response again, so I can render it in my view. Good. Okay, now before we move actually into the model itself, I want to add more concept to this because it is very crucial and help you to build better code. So like I told you, the model will not be only for adding, but for editing as well, which means we need a way to know also which current book we want to edit. And up to now, we have an option to see the book details, okay? Which means that now for our list, you need a way when you click that item in our list. So at the moment, we just have this. So when we click, we see the details. But you need a way that if you click an item, you can see the details and also an option for edit and later when we want to delete. So what we have to do is we have to change a little bit the structure here. So I'll go back to my component, which is book list, and I will change this a little bit. So what I have done basically, I just update my li so I can see the title and the author, but I'll see some list of buttons. So the first button to see the details like we have at the moment, but I have two extra buttons basically, one to edit and one to delete, okay? Which means now our component is expecting these properties. So I have to pass on those properties as well. So I'll pass it down here, which means I have to pass them also up from our component too. So I'll go back to my app.tsx and let's go to our book details, or no, actually the book list. Okay, and I need to add a few more properties. So we said one is handle edit book. Okay, should be equal to something we will define. And we have other ones handle delete book, which will also equal to something. Okay. So what I will do here, I'll say on handle delete book. And basically this function will not do anything yet. We'll cover this in the next chapter. So const. So I'm just defining to make sure no errors. But the other one we have to make it now because we need a book selection. So I'll call it on handle edit book selection. Because we'll be selecting a book. And I'll come and define it right here. And basically we need a set will store that one for us. Okay, so we have to define a new state. We shall call it editing book. So I'll come here, add a new state. Okay, and this one should be book I. And we are setting an initial value to null. So initially you will not have anything selected. Okay, but basically now if someone go and click that handle edit, we need to set the edit book as well to the book. Okay, that will come from the function itself, and that will be type book I. And also we want to set the modal to true, so the modal open up. So basically you want to open up the modal when someone click the add button or someone click the edit button within a book. Okay, great. Now that's mean our book list should pass on the top that book. So I think I already did that. So it is passing up the book for us, the full details, which is great. Now I need to define this one here to be same as other one. It pass a book up for us, and then we have handle delete, which currently doesn't do anything. We'll fix it later. So I'll just do a function which give us back nothing. Okay. Now great. And I'll just remove this for now. We'll fix it later too, just to make everything happy. Great. Now we created our app structure. So we have our states that we can handle for us, you know, it can handle for us the status of the model. It also can track for us which one book we want to edit. Now all what we want to do is passing down that editing book to our child component of the model. So I'll come here. So editing book is equal editing book. So I'm keeping the same name for consistency. And we should be good. Now, this is the model, so I just copy and paste quickly some code here and we'll go through it. But I think before that, what I have done is you will have a lot of API calls through our app. So what I have done is I created a book service and created API folder, then book service. And all what I have done here, basically, I just create the API URL for our server so I can keep using it everywhere. Then I defined a function here that gets the books for us. So whatever we did basically up here, okay? So I create a function for it that does the work for me, okay? And it listens to it and gives me back the data. Same for the add book as well. Same for updating book. And if you remember the routes we created here, so for getting and updating, we're using /books, and that's what I have done here. So get is URL /books, and also for adding a new book also is the base URL /books. Okay, but for updating and deleting, if you remember the route we created earlier, it is /book/ whatever book ID, and that's why in the service you will see here that for updating and deleting we have the base URL /book/ the ID, and also for deleting we have /book/ ID. Okay, basically I'm just creating different files to handle the API calls to keep my code a little bit cleaner and less messier, which means, you know, when I come back here, I can do a lot of less code right here. So I'll just go ahead and clean it up. So I'll go and import get books, okay, from our API service. Then inside our fetch book, basically I can just go await for my get books. Oops, await get books. Simple as that, okay? And then we are setting books to data, and actually I'm returning here, where's my service? I'm returning here my data directly. So here I just have to get back my response. Okay, that is very good. And same thing we'll do in other places too, as well. So we need actually the add book and update book because that will be doing our model. And in here, what I have done, I'm just handling two fields for today's demo, but you can feel free as a side project. You can go and finish up this application on your side and handle extra fields if you want to. So all I'm doing is I'm handling the title and the author, and I'm checking if I'm editing a book, then pass on the title. Otherwise, it's empty string as initial default value. Same for the author. If I am editing a book, display that author name, otherwise just an empty string. Okay, then we have a loading status that we need actually to start triggering our API calls to update or create a new book. Okay, then we have the handle submit function. That one triggers basically when you trigger your form, and we'll come back to it actually. So or what we are doing here, basically we're checking, are we editing a book? If yes, then display a title of edit book. If not, display a title of adding a book. Okay, then we have our label of title, input field of title, and then when we are typing, we're just updating the state with the current value. Same thing we're doing with author as well. And then in here, we just have a button that it's have cancel. So that's one basic. If you want to cancel your operation, you can trigger close. And if you go, remember the close goes back here, which close up your model. Okay. Then the next thing we have is the submit button, and there is no on click because we type on submit basically inside the form. That is the one which is triggering this on submit right there. Okay. So let's say you fill your form and everything is great. So what we are doing here basically is first we are preventing the default behavior of your form, because what will happen if you don't do this, your form will reload the screen, which means you will lose all your data on your screen. Okay, then we set the loading to true. Okay, so we are doing something, so show a spinner or whatever you want to do in your side work, and then we are checking if we are actually editing a book, then this is the API we are calling update book. Otherwise we are actually creating a new book. Okay, and when both of these things are done, whatever one of them, then we are just clicking on save. And if you remember that on save, we just go ahead and trigger the fetch books and re-update the list of your data. And then we are actually triggering the on close, so it can go and close up your pop-up. Then of course here we are catching if any errors have happened. And finally, when everything is done, success or failure, I want finally to set my loading to false. Simple as that. It's a lot of mouthful, but it is really simple and very easy. If you just want to stop the video and go through this code and try by yourself step by step. Okay, now let's go and try this and see if this is working. We did so many things. So you can see my UI has been changed. So I have my list of items with three buttons next to them, so it's more meaningful and easy for us to use. And what I will do is I will go first and try to add a book, and I'll open my console log to keep eye on it. And there is my form coming up successfully. I can see here add book as well, and save and cancel button. If I click cancel, that should disappear. Now let's try again. So let's try test one, test author one, and let's click save. And okay, so you said here we have an error coming up which is saying failed to save the book. I actually made a big huge error, so I don't have slash API. I don't know why I have added that. So let's save this and let's try again. And let's reload. And let's close this. Let's add a book. And I say test add one and test author add one. And let's see if this now works. And there we go. You can see our API here. It's successfully going, and we got our response back with all the details as well. So, and I can see also the item being added in my list right here. So test add one by author add one. So this is great. So adding a new book is working amazingly. Now let's go try action edit a book, okay? And let's go edit the second one. You can see the form is pre-filling what with previous data. So we have to go and fix this bug. So what we can do here is that when we click handle add book, okay, we need to reset this editing book. So we have to make sure we are always resetting when we are closing the pop-up. So I'll go here and do this to null. Okay, and let's if this will fix the problem again. Let's go again and try. Let's go again and try. Let's hard reload. And actually, this is like a good step for you also to learn how to debug. So let's add one more. So one, save, and let's edit the first one. And you can see here it's still pre-filling. So I guess the issue here, because this component doesn't really remount behind the scenes, so it's still remembering its local state. So the best solution actually, even from performance perspective, is don't render this component until really it has to be, okay? So what I will do a conditional rendering here. I'll say if is model open, then display this model for me. And that means I don't need to pass on this property down, which means I can remove it from here and remove it from there and remove this one from here too. Great. Now let's test this again and see if this is working. Let's hard reload, add a new book. I'll say two, save, and let's go edit the first one, and there we go. So now it's preferred to actually the one I opened now, and let's say updated book 1 to 2, and say to 2, and let's save this. Okay, so the one for updating, it is failing. So you can see our button is still saying saving, and we got here fail to save the book. Okay, please try again. Now, if I go to the network, we get actually here and define. And if I go to my header, you can see actually I'm not passing the book ID. Okay, so that is the error I'm getting right there. Now we can go back here and actually track what we are doing. So on the save, we are updating the book and we get editing book. So the way I usually do, I'll just go and do like this, cancel log, and check I'm passing the correct details. And also what I will do here, I'm checking again. So the first one is the ID. So I should be passing the book / ID. So I'm just checking the path it is correct right here. Okay, so basically something's wrong right there where the ID is not picking up. So let's see now if we debug this, because our console, I'll say, okay, I will just clean up my console, click save, and there we go. Okay, so the reason why is if you see here, when we get our ID back from the database, it is actually underscore ID and it's not ID. Okay. So what I have done, I just came back here basically and I changed and I fixed the mistake. So I'm pointing now to the actual ID. Now I'll save this and let's go back to our browser and I'll hard reload to make sure I'm good. Now let's go and, for example, update this one. So I'll go click edit and let's say edit 2, 2 and 2, 2 and let's click save. And you can see my change successfully has been updated, okay? And if I go to my network tab, that is my books call, and that is the one retrieving actually the list again. And the one we actually did the update was this one. So that is a put call for the update, and that is our server running, and that is the route we created, book / whatever ID of our item to get it updated. So basically our components, our application is working as expected successfully. Okay, so we can see the details. So if I click details, okay, I can edit if I want to edit. I can add a book if I want to add a book. Now, I can go more further and also do the delete functionality, but I want to keep this one for you to go ahead. Already the structure is ready for you and set up, okay? All what you have to do basically is just figure out how you can hook that one to the API right here and show the details updated when you are done. So feel free to go ahead with this challenge and try out on your side. I'll put this code up in GitHub and I'll put the link as well in the description for you if you want to start it from here. And let me know how you go in the comment section. So if anyone face any issues or have any troubles, I'll be happy to make a follow-up video for this course and finish it up for you as well. So have fun, enjoy your coding, and keep tuned for the next tutorials.